Okay, I would ask you to consider the following conversation. Stranger. Ah, you have a nice accent. Where are you from? Well, I was born in Northern Ireland, but I've grown up in North East England. Ah, that's a lovely accent. I had friends in Ireland once. Oh, okay. Whereabouts? Cork and Wicklow. It was beautiful there. Ah, yes, I understand it is. I've never been there. North East England is also beautiful. Come and meet this Irish lad. Well, actually I'm British. I love the Irish accent. Right, you see the sort of traction of that. So you have a friendly person making conversation, but they're not really listening. This is something I've had for close to 20 years, living in England. And I've experienced it a little bit in Scotland as well. And I suspect many people from Northern Ireland will have had similar stories. So I want to talk a little bit about this. I have touched on it before. I don't want to talk too much about politics or anything like that. This is more about personal sentiments. So I don't want to get into the politics of the Troubles or Irish nationalism or anything like that. Okay, this is more a personal thing. I mean, those are valid subjects, but it's just a personal thing because for me, whilst I have an interest in the Irish culture, a respect for the Irish culture, and I really do. I'm interested in Irish mythology. I'm interested in Irish history. I think it's a fascinating place. I've just never felt Irish. I've never seen myself that way. I'll admit, when I first came to England, when I started learning more about the Troubles, I did briefly sort of have this idea, am I Irish? Is that how I feel? And I kind of went through some sentiments to that extent, but it never really became a thing. I'm not English. I'm from a Celtic culture. So I do believe that even in Northern Ireland, even in the unionist side of things, it's still Celtic. It's unionist, it's British, but it's also Celtic. And I don't think that's a contradiction. In the same way that Scotland and Wales are Celtic nations, but they're part of the United Kingdom. I'm British. That's just the way it is. I feel sentiments and patriotic feelings towards the UK. That's how I feel, and no one can tell me otherwise. But anyway, that's personal feelings, right? So when I get into these sort of conversations, often it's older people, sometimes younger people, and 99% of the time I know that they don't mean anything by it. They're just making conversation. So I accept that. And I don't consider myself overly sensitive or politically correct. And I certainly hope I don't have a chip on my shoulder. So when they say it, most of the time I don't say anything. I'll kind of gently correct them if they keep calling me Irish. But that's kind of where the problem lies. When you tell someone something, when you clarify something, as a matter of respect, they should listen. Now, a lot of English people, and I'm sorry, but it is mostly English people, and it isn't everyone, but a lot of people just don't seem to really register that Northern Ireland and Ireland is not the same thing. I think they do know. Like, at a push, they will know about it. But as a matter of everyday speak, they think Irish accent, Irish. And I must admit, whilst I try not to show it, and I don't think I have a chip on my shoulder, it is irritating. Because it's like they're viewing me as an outside visitor, like an Irish international student or something, rather than a compatriot, another Briton. And I must admit that does bug me. Now, I know some people in the Republic will say, oh well, then why don't you call yourself Irish? Because it's not the way I feel. It just isn't. And I'm not trying to please people in the Republic of Ireland or the English. It's just about how I feel myself. So I think when you clarify things, people need to respect that. And I think there'll be other similar situations here. let's say, for example, someone is British Chinese insofar as they were born in the UK of Chinese lineage. Maybe their grandparents came over from Hong Kong or Guangdong, but they're British Chinese. Now, they may choose to see themselves as British. They may say they're British Chinese. Very rarely will they say they're Chinese, although they may touch on that Chinese aspect of their culture, because maybe their parents taught them a bit of Mandarin, maybe not. But I know people in that position also have a little bit. I mean, I don't feel like I have an identity crisis. I know what I am. But it's like other people are putting an identity crisis on me. So I wonder how British Chinese people feel, because a lot of Britons will assume that they're just Chinese visitors, and Chinese will say they're not. Like, I mean, mainland Chinese will often say, oh, you're part of the diaspora, you're not really Chinese. So I suspect they also feel a bit of identity situation going on there. As far as I'm concerned, if you're born in the UK and you see yourself as British, you're British. So I don't look at a black Briton or a Chinese Briton or a Pakistani Briton and say, oh, they're from somewhere else. I think they're British, because we're a diverse country. And that's not being politically correct, it's just a statement of fact. We are a diverse country. So I see Gemma Chan, the model and actress, as British. I see Lennox Lewis, the black boxer, as British. These are just some very loose examples off the top of my head. Lewis Hamilton is a British guy. He's a British Formula 1 racer. I don't look at the colour, I'm thinking nationality. They're British. Now, blood and soil nationalists will think you can only be British if you're white, which is nonsense. I mean, they'll say, oh, it's just a technicality, but if someone feels British, if they've grown up here, they're British. And I think how people self-identify should be respected. I mean, let me give an example of the Scottish nationalism issue. I believe in one United Kingdom. I oppose Scottish nationalism because I don't want to see this country broken up. So I'm obviously not going to agree with the politics of a Scottish nationalist. But I'm not going to say to them, you have to call yourself British, if they're saying I'm only Scottish. I wouldn't agree with it, but I'm not going to tell them how to describe themselves. That's my idea of tolerance, in a sense. So I think people should have the right to describe themselves whatever way they want, but there is also the reality. Now, the reality is Scotland's part of the UK. What happens from the outcome of this general election, and maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but we'll see. Anyway, all I would simply say is, it's true that there are people in Northern Ireland themselves there are more and more people now just saying Irish. My sister, for example, calls herself Irish. I think my auntie does, but other members of my family, were British. So it's something that is quite individual as well. I think in Northern Ireland the demographics have changed. More people now would probably identify as Irish than British because the demographics have changed. But if you meet someone from Northern Ireland, a sure way to wind them up, if their sentiments are British, would be to persistently call them Irish. You may be thinking, well, it's Northern Ireland, it's part of the island of Ireland. It is, but that's geographical as opposed to identity. Technically, yes, they're from the island of Ireland, but it's part of the UK. So if you're treating them like Irish, to them they're saying you're not as British, they're not as British as you are, and that's insulting. I mean, that is insulting if you are talking to someone in that sort of way, and maybe you don't realise it, maybe it's innocent, but please, it's a matter of courtesy, it's a matter of respect. Listen to what people are saying. And the other side of the coin, of course, is people shouldn't be too uptight. I mean, for me personally, when people get it wrong, I don't get really defensive and like, oh, I'm actually, I might gently correct them, but I won't make a big thing of it. What does irritate me though is when I've clarified and they persist in doing it. That's borderline disrespectful. But the problem is, if you're Northern Irish and you grew up in England, you have to kind of get used to it, because people are going to be stubborn. They're going to just, you can't force them to change their thinking, so you have to adapt to an extent. But yeah, I do think people should be respectful, and if you make something clear, I don't think, for the record, that asking where someone is from is an insult, and I think that people who take it as an insult need to lighten up a bit. I remember I met some guys, African American guys, in my university. They were from Brooklyn, and I was just making conversation as I saw. I asked where they were from, and they seemed a bit standoffish, and I was like, well, just asking. And they said they were from Brooklyn. I said, oh right, how's that? And they got quite defensive about it, so I had to explain, look, I don't mean anything by it, I'm just asking. So I also think that's the other side of it. Some people are too sensitive and they will read too much into something that isn't there. I know that the sort of dialogue I'm talking about, 99% of the time it's innocent. It's just that I'm afraid a lot of English people, and it is primarily English, some in Scotland, they're just a little bit stubborn. You tell them, they'll still do it. It's irritating. But what I would say is, it's like, if you're from Essex and you see yourself as an Essex boy or an Essex girl, and I persistently say you're a Londoner, like let's say it's one of the outer boroughs, it's going to annoy you. Well, it's the same principle. So it's just, mutual respect. Just listen to what people are saying, and that's a way to learn more about people. It's not about being uptight, it's not about having a chip on your shoulder, but it's about mutual respect. So listen to what people are saying, but also don't be too sensitive, because in most cases they don't mean anything by it. So for example, and this also applies to others, if you're British Chinese or British Pakistani and someone says where you're from, they're not trying to be offensive. They're not saying you're not British. They're just making conversation. And if you say, I was born in Manchester, I was born in Birmingham, I was born in London, then they should recognise you as British. But people are going to be stubborn, and I think generally people don't have a good sense of geography, just as a general thing. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. If you've had any similar experience, if you're a visible minority and you've had an experience like this, do let me know, because I have a lot of empathy. I know that it can be irritating, but I also think people need to not read too much into it. It doesn't mean someone's being racist. It might be an honest thing, because we do have mainland Chinese people visiting, for example, just using that as an example. So, it's just about learning, it's just about respecting, that's all. And it's also about not being too sensitive. Those three things: learning, respecting, and not being too sensitive. That's a way to have an easygoing conversation. Let me know your thoughts.